All right, let's talk about one of the most powerful and, let's be honest, one of the most confusing hooks in React, useEffect. We're going to cut through all that confusion and give you a simple, clear mental model that just works. I mean, come on, you know the feeling, right? You write an effect and suddenly your app is just spinning out of control, fetching data in a never-ending loop. Or maybe you have a timer and the value inside of it just gets stuck, never updating. Yeah, if that sounds familiar, you are definitely not alone. This is one of those hurdles that trips up pretty much every React developer, no matter how experienced they are. And all of those classic bugs we run into, stale data, those dreaded infinite loops, sneaky memory leaks that can crash your app, even unnecessary re-renders that slow everything down, they almost always come from one single fundamental misunderstanding of what uEffect is actually for. So over the next few minutes, we're going to fix that misunderstanding for good. We're going to arm you with a new way of thinking about it, a mental model that will make writing effects feel intuitive, instead of like you're walking through a minefield. So what exactly is this big misunderstanding? Well, it all starts with the way most of us were first taught to think about useEffect in the first place. We're often told, hey, this is just the new way to do lifecycle stuff, right? Like a replacement for component did mount or component did update from the old class components. But that's the trap. Here's the absolute P. uEffect is not a lifecycle hook. It is a synchronization tool, and I'm telling you, making that one mental shift changes everything. Okay, so let's really dive into that. What does it actually mean to adopt this synchronization mindset? What are we even talking about? It's actually pretty simple. Synchronization is just the process of keeping your component's world, all its state and props, in step with some system that lives outside of React's control. And what is this outside world? Well, it's anything React doesn't manage on its own. Think about fetching data from an API, messing with the browser DOM directly, setting up timers with interval, listening to a WebSocket subscription, or sending data to an analytics service. All that stuff exists outside of React's little bubble. And when you think about it this way, the whole structure of useEffect just clicks into place. The main function you pass in, that's the what to do to get in sync. The cleanup function you can return, that's how to undo it so you don't cause memory leaks. And that dependency array, that's just you telling React when to do it again because something might be out of sync now. So what happens when this model breaks down, when our synchronization fails? Well, that's when we get all those classic hair-pulling bugs. Let's look at a couple of real-world examples. First up, probably the most common uEffect bug in existence, the stale closure. This is what happens when your effect is basically living in the past, working with old, outdated information. Look at this buggy code on the left. Because the dependency array is empty, the effect runs one time, and it closes over the initial value of count, which is 0. It's like it took a picture of that value and then never looked again. It will log 0 forever. The fix on the right uses a functional update. This basically tells React, hey, I don't care what the value was when you started, just give me the latest value and let me add 1 to it. It keeps the effect perfectly in sync. And in a real app, this isn't just a number in the console, is it? This shows up as a counter on the screen that looks totally frozen. It's your analytics firing off events with the wrong data. It's polling logic that just silently stops working. It's a real problem. All right, bug number 2. The one we have all created at some point, the infinite loop. This is a perfect example of a synchronization paradox, where the effect is just chasing its own tail. The pattern here is so simple, but so destructive. The effect depends on the count state, but the very first thing it does inside the effect is update that same count state. So what happens? The state changes, which triggers a re-render. The re-render causes the effect to run again, which updates the state again, and around we go. The rule here is simple. A state variable that causes an effect to run should not be updated inside that same effect. Okay, so knowing how to use uEffect is crucial, but you know what separates a good developer from a great one? Knowing when not to use it. This is where we get into senior level thinking. Here's a super common anti-pattern, using an effect to calculate what we call derived state. Look at the bad example. We have a first name and a last name, and we're using a whole useEffect just to combine them into a full name state. This is so inefficient. It causes an extra unnecessary re-render every time. The good approach on the right is so much simpler. Just calculate the value directly during the render. Const full name equals done. Remember, if you're not synchronizing with an outside system, you probably don't need an effect. And that brings us to the biggest when not to use it category of all, dealing with server data. This quote really nails it. You use uEffect to sync with the browser. For syncing with a backend, we have way better tools for the job. So when do you pick which one? This little table makes it pretty clear. Is your data coming from the backend? Does it need caching and automatic refetching? A dedicated server state library is absolutely the way to go. But are you dealing with a direct browser side effect, like adding an event listener, something that needs a cleanup function? Well, that is the perfect job for useEffect. All right, let's make this really practical. How can this whole synchronization mindset help you ace those tricky interview questions that everybody loves to ask? Here's a classic trap. They're not just testing if you know the rule, they want to see if you actually understand why the rule exists. Now, a weak answer is something like, because the linter tells you to. But a strong answer using our new model sounds like this. Because omitting dependencies breaks the synchronization contract. The effect becomes out of sync with the component's actual state, which is what leads to stale closures and all sorts of unpredictable bugs. See the difference? One is a rule. The other is a deep understanding. And here's a senior level question. This one is designed to test your knowledge of the entire React ecosystem, not just a single hook. The junior answer is, yes, you fetch data after the component mounts. Not totally wrong, but it's not the full story. The senior level answer shows nuance. You say, no, not always. Well, you can use useEffect for simple cases. For synchronizing with server state, dedicated libraries like React Query are a much better choice. They're built to handle complex things like caching, retries, and background refetching automatically, which is much more efficient than building it all by hand. So if you remember just one thing from all of this, let it be this quote right here. This single sentence will prevent more bugs and performance problems than almost any other rule. Always ask yourself, am I actually synchronizing with an outside system, or can this value just be calculated during render? Answering that one question correctly, that is the true key to mastering uEffect.